Yes. Let's move it.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Sidney Barbier, and my project this summer was focused on zero waste events, helping sustain an effective zero waste event program as a tangible climate solution. So a little bit about me. This is actually my second internship with YVSC. I also did it last summer. I just finished my freshman year attending the University of Denver, where I'm pursuing a double major in both environmental science as well as music viola performance. I'm an avid Nordic skier. I'm part of the ski team as well. I've kind of always been passionate about sustainability growing up in Steamboat my whole life. It's kind of been, instilled in me from a very young age, whether that's from backpacking, fishing, hunting, always being in the outdoors and kind of seeing all these changes before me from climate change kind of always gave me that initiative to want to make some sort of change. I was a Girl Scout since I was like in kindergarten and actually completed my gold award on a similar project focused on zero waste. And then I've done a lot of work with YVSC in the past and was very excited to have this opportunity to work with them again. So my staff mentors for this term were Wynn Cowman, the Waste Division Director, and Dakota Dolan, the Zero Waste Coordinator. Some of our major partners were the City of Steamboat Springs, Main Street Steamboat, specifically Lisa Povovich, who's the Executive Director, and then Calgary Compost, also with Wynn Cowman. So a little bit of background knowledge on zero waste, like why are we even focused on it in the first place? So YVSC's kind of overarching goal with all of the different priority areas is climate action. So zero waste is actually a really great climate solution. Zero waste in general, for those of you who don't know, is the goal of it is to basically minimize the amount of waste that's going into the landfill through actions such as recycling and composting. The overall goals of this are helping to reduce needs for the extraction of other raw materials, you're conserving energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, etc. In addition, composting itself is a really powerful climate solution. When food waste or other compostable materials end up in the landfill, they actually produce a greenhouse gas known as methane, which is over like 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So this has a really big impact. And just by composting, though you do produce some carbon dioxide, you're really limiting that greenhouse gas potential. In addition, composting has benefits for carbon sequestration as you're increasing the health of soils. Zero waste also, through actions such as recycling and composting, can provide almost 10 times more jobs. So it also has a social aspect as well. So just seeing having these three bins there can actually have some really big rippling effects in the community as well as the climate solution. So I just want to talk briefly about what I did last summer with my internships. So we were kind of having a bit of a startup with zero waste events, getting them back going in Steamboat. So it was kind of a partnership with the City of Steamboat Springs, specifically looking at the Steamboat Farmers Market as a kind of pilot study to see how we could get these zero waste events to be super effective. So on the right, you can kind of see our progression over time. Definitely came a long way, starting out with a lot of random bins, figuring out the signage, kind of trial and error to kind of where we are today. If you have been to farmers markets or seen our events in the past, so we've kind of got a good system down. Kind of highlighting a few of the findings briefly. We were kind of looking at the difference between whether you had stations that were manned by volunteers versus ones that were not supervised. And we obviously found that when you do not have people there helping, you have really dramatic increases in contamination. You can obviously see the unmanned recycling has straws and styrofoam, and when you have someone there, you have less than 5% contamination. We definitely found the value in volunteer education and clear signage. And overall, through our farmers market events last year, we had like an average waste diversion rate of around 61%, which is actually really good, but we knew that there's still a long way to go. This is just kind of an example of also some of the reports that I created last summer to kind of give event organizers kind of the data for what their event actually reduced in terms of metric tons of CO2, gallons of gasoline, and kind of see the breakup of their event. And this is also something that we continue to use in the future. So this summer, my main project objectives were mainly to focus on these high traffic zero waste events such as the Steamboat Farmers Market and free summer concerts. There was kind of 3 target goals that I had. One of them was focusing on volunteer education to kind of have that consistent messaging, then developing a zero waste vendor certification program, as well as a zero waste event toolkit. So one of the new things about this summer was the partnership between the City of Steamboat Springs and the Advancing Zero Waste Initiative with YBSC. So the City of Steamboat actually budgeted about $30,000 for sustainability incentives, so that event organizers could make their events zero waste and have a financial incentive to do so. Through partnership with YBSC, they would help provide the stations as well as the signage education and volunteers as well. So this is a pretty really cool thing for the community. It also goes hand in hand with the Routt County Climate Action Plan, which has a goal of increasing waste diversion to 46% by 2050 and 85% by 2030 and then 2050, which these are really imperative goals if we want to get anywhere near the overall climate mitigation, and zero waste events can actually play a really big part. Diverting all those materials can help us reach those waste diversion goals. So that first step, they won't play, was the creation of volunteer education videos. So I worked with Dakota on this project. So education obviously is a really crucial part of these zero waste events, and we need to have volunteers that know what they're doing, why they're doing it, so that they can actually be helpful and confident in what they're doing. So the reason kind of for this video, we did it was really short, kind of 6-minute video talking about basics of waste diversion. People know why zero waste, so they can have a little bit of knowledge when interacting with people, and then kind of showing what goes in what bin, and then kind of how to set up the man stations and what their role is at the events. And then hopefully we'll be able to use this video for future events. You can send it out to the volunteers beforehand so that they can watch and come with a little bit of background knowledge before they learn the specifics of the event. The second piece of my project so far was the creation of a zero waste vendor certification program. So the goal of this was to incentivize vendors to help make events zero waste. So I noticed a lot of farmers markets, you have people, when I tell them they have to put their straws in the trash, they're like, well, why is that? Can you do anything about it? And it's not necessarily me, because I have no control over what the vendors actually do. But I think being able to have vendors that are marketing their sustainability will have both a benefit for the vendors, because hopefully they'll be able to gain new customers, but then the consumers themselves will be able to support businesses that they see are actually making sustainable choices by being zero waste. So I also worked with Julia Hebard, who's the marketing and communications kind of coordinator that helps out with YBSC. And she's going to help me on developing a logo. This is not the real logo. This is a makeshift logo. But hopefully we'll be able to develop something that the vendors can put up in either it's their windows of their food trucks or on their websites, so that people can see that they are certified zero waste. And then I actually helped create kind of a program, like a zero waste agreement, that these vendors will have to kind of sign and then kind of show which materials they're actually going to be using at the events. And then we as YBSC can go and do some sort of kind of audit, make sure everything's okay, and have that conversation with the vendors. And then obviously this is an ongoing project. Hopefully we're looking to do it next summer. We're also working with Lisa Popovich at the farmers market to see how we can best implement that and have conversation with the vendors, coming in spring, so that they can start thinking how to purchase zero waste materials. And then the third part of my project was creating this zero waste kind of do-it-yourself toolkit. So obviously there is that partnership between the city and YBSC, but YBSC doesn't necessarily have the breadth to do every single event in Steamboat. So the goal of this was to create a step-by-step guideline in the form of a guidebook that we could turn into, whether it's a brochure or a online PDF that kind of shows the before the event, during the event, and after the event phases, kind of giving resources, links to resources, so how these event organizers can create their own zero waste events. These are kind of just some examples of what the toolkit actually looks like. And then I also have been working with Julia Hebard as well on this. And the goal is to kind of create possibly having a partnership with the Steamboat Chamber event, and actually going in and talking to these event organizers earlier before the event season to educate them on the opportunities for the financial incentives, as well as distribute the do-it-yourself toolkit. So hopefully they can have that information to make the decisions moving forward. Some major takeaways so far. Obviously, my project is actually ongoing. I started a little bit later than some of the other interns, but so far, our waste diversion rates for the farmers market, I think this was as of last week, was 72.65%. Our free summer concerts were 80%, and all the other ones were about 73%. So even compared to last summer, that's a dramatic difference, and getting really close to zero waste, which is really exciting. I've been working at all the free summer concerts and farmers markets, and I've seen them as a really great success. Very little contamination so far, and all the volunteers have been super helpful, so it's really cool to see. I've been able to actually have education and engagement with the public, having those conversations about zero waste in the Yampa Valley, which is super helpful. The volunteer training seems to be going well. Hopefully we'll continue that in the future. The vendor certification program is on track, so hopefully we'll be able to implement that by next summer. And then we have the toolkit, which hopefully will also help event organizers going forward as well. Just kind of some kind of future recommendations for zero waste in the Yampa Valley. So YVSC's kind of role in waste diversion is just mainly centered, right? We're here for education, increasing awareness on these issues, and creating behavioral change. We obviously aren't the ones who are actually dealing with the recycling and where it's going. We obviously can help, connect people to resources such as composting. And then as far as zero waste events specifically, we definitely need to make sure we have those man stations. So looking for ways that we can increase volunteer recruitment overall will be super helpful. Definitely keeping volunteer education updated, implemented, and then keeping that zero waste event toolkit as well, and then hopefully implementing the vendor certification program. A little bit more of my personal experience. Obviously, this summer was super great to work with both Wynn and Cody actually, out in the field, hands-on, looking at waste diversion. I actually got to go visit the materials recovery facility out near Milner, which is really cool to actually see where things are going, as well as Cowgirl Compost, which is really fun. And then kind of looking to my future in environmental science, which is obviously so broad. This internship has definitely helped me kind of see what I'm actually really interested in, and kind of where I can go from there. I also definitely learned the value of the interaction between both businesses and the marketing side, as well as the sustainability, because I can have all these great ideas, but businesses might not be interested. And if that's the case, then nothing's going to happen. So you have to make sure that you keep in mind, profitability and the marketing side of things as well. Definitely learned, the meaning of team. Zero waste events are a lot, and we definitely need all the help, whether that's volunteers, YVSC staff, and my mentors as well. And then kind of just being through conversations with members in the community and other YVSC staff, kind of how a nonprofit works, like YVSC, and how we can actually make a difference. And then lastly, definitely just want to thank Wynn, Cowan, and Dakota for being such amazing mentors, and will continue to be. Connor Burns, who's our YVSC Zero Waste Program waste technician, for his help as well on the zero waste events. Lisa Popovich with Main Street Steamboat, Julie Hubbard with the marketing and communications, all the YVSC staff, including Michelle Stewart, our executive director, all the zero waste volunteers, the YVSC interns for all their support as well. And then lastly, Nicole Pepper, the internship program manager for making this program so amazing. So thank you. And then any questions?
Sidney, I'm curious in terms of the reaction of the vendors and what you saw in terms of maybe the difference between last year and this year.
Yeah, I think we definitely even saw just from last summer and even the start of the event season this year, we did send out a letter from both Wynn and I talking to the vendors that we're trying to make this a zero waste event and kind of giving them a list of materials. I think we did see a shift. We now see a lot of compostable plastics and things like that, but we definitely see a lot less of those like single-use plastic materials. A lot of people actually moved to 100% compostable paper boats. So I think overall there's been a really positive trend towards zero waste. There's still a little bit to go, But I think that with the vendor certification program, I think that's gonna even help even further. But yeah.
We probably have time for one more question, if anyone has any more questions.
I have one if there's not any others in the room too.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Awesome job, Sidney. Such a pleasure to hear about and really exceptional work. I think that might have been Gary asking that question, which was the first question, which is really, you know, how do we interpret and or explain the increased diversion rates from last summer to this summer? So it was a great response there. One thing is, since you've had so many interactions, you know, with the public, and even at the beginning of your slide, you said that increasing, you know, recycling or composting itself has a host of other, you know, kind of trickle effects. I think you framed it as. It would be great to hear you share some of the things that you've heard people say. You know, you gave several reasons why zero waste is valuable. Climate, you know, reducing, you know, saving airspace basically in the landfill. I don't know if that one's that charismatic for people in the public, but it would just be great to hear you, you know, explain and or interpret, given your exchanges with the public, what do you see as the most salient reasons why people enjoy or personally value zero waste as a practice and as a behavioral change?
Yeah, I think talking with a lot of people, especially at farmers market, because you have a lot of people coming from out of town who are staying at like, you know, condos, and they always ask me, why don't I have recycling in my condo? And I'm like, well, that's not me, but I'm so excited that you want to recycle, and they want to know where they can get composting, or if people that live in Steamboat, a lot of people, are interested in composting on their own because they're worried about bears. But I think for most people, when they think about just like recycling and composting in general, they're probably not thinking about carbon sequestration and like the landfill space. But I think for them, probably they think of it probably as a climate solution, but also they just think, I don't know, probably the biggest thing, even like for me when I thought about recycling, was probably like the energy that's used to make other materials. Like that's kind of the thing you learn, especially like just in school, like by recycling, an aluminum can, you don't have to make a new aluminum can. So it's kind of like by recycling, it's kind of like creating new resources with the avoiding creating new resources. So I think that's the biggest one. And then by doing that, yes, you are saving greenhouse gas emissions. But I think that's the biggest thing for people. And I think people don't like the idea of putting things in the landfill. They might not be thinking about the space in the landfill and all that, but it makes them feel good to be able to put something in a recycle or a compost bin, as opposed to knowing that it's going to the landfill and it's not going to break down or be created to do any sort of good in the future. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a wonderful response. And I think I too heard people say that, like, it's such